Hi, I'm Chef Alan Tetreault with Global Sugar Art, and welcome back to our Buttercream Basics series. And today we're going to be doing string theory. More specifically, we're going to be using round tips to do string work and to do various borders that you can make with the round tips. Just to clarify, I'm not going to be doing oriental string work. That is string work that goes both up and down. It often is away from the side of the cake. They do what they call bridge work and extension work. That is a much different process. What we're going to be learning today is basic string work that you can use to embellish the borders on a cake, drop borders and crescent borders and many different types of borders. So let's get started. To get started today, I want to briefly talk about icing. I'm using a different icing today than I've used in the last videos. I've been using buttercream right along. Today I'm using a boiled icing, and the recipe for that will be on our website under recipes, or if you're watching this on YouTube, if you look up at the description under the YouTube caption or the YouTube title, you'll see a link to our recipe file. I will be using royal icing as well, but the boiled icing is a great decorating icing. Basically what it is meringue powder and water, and that's beaten to a meringue, and then you add powdered sugar and you beat it up to a nice stiff royal icing, and then you cook some sugar and water up to 240 degrees, the softball stage, and you very slowly pour that into your royal icing, and you get a beautiful meringue icing that is just fabulous to decorate with. It does all kinds of decorations really well. It holds up for flowers, and it also does beautiful string work. So be sure to check out that recipe. To begin with, you're going to find that many of the borders that I teach today are very similar to the ones that we did with the stars. I am starting with a number 8 round tip. And again, I'm using the Atico tips today, and I'm going to start with just a little button border, just a little dot of icing. Very, very similar to the star. I'm going to go straight up and down, a 90-degree angle. I'm going to squeeze out the icing, and I'm just keeping the tip buried, and then I'm relaxing the pressure and just a little teeny circle around the top, and you won't get that little point up in the middle of the button. So again, this is a little dot border. Stop the pressure and just a little bit of a circle. It's very important that you stop the pressure before going in that little bit of a circle, and try to keep the pressure nice and even so that each little dot looks like the one before it. Just to show you, if you don't stop the pressure ahead of time, what's going to happen is you're going to come up and you're going to end up with a little peak on the dot. Or if you're putting too much pressure and lifting the tube up, you're going to get a little column. So again, it's very important that you keep the tip of the icing buried in the little mound as it's building up. Release the pressure and just a little bit of a circle. I'm just keeping the very tip just slightly buried in the icing. And that is a dot border. And of course, that border can be made with any of the round tips. The smaller, from the smallest right up to the largest tip you can find. You can use this border on the side or the top of a cake, or even make like little dots, like little polka dots on the side of a cake. The next border we're going to do resembles the shell border that we did with the star tip. And for this border, same thing as before, 45-degree angle. I'm going to let the icing build up and just come over itself, and I relax the pressure and I pull away. This is a basic shell border with a round tip, and this is a fairly large tip that I'm using. This is a number 10 tip. So this would be a nice chunky border for the bottom of a cake. So again, 45-degree angle, squeeze, let the icing build up and roll over itself, and then relax the pressure as you pull back. And that is a basic shell border using a round tip. Now, in a lot of wedding work or decorating on fondant-covered cakes, you'll often see a very, very, very tiny shell border done with a round tip. It's sometimes called a snail trail. And that border is done with anywhere from a number 1 or a number 2 or a number 3 tip. Today I'm going to be using a number 2 tip. So just like the shell border, I'm going to do it the same way at a 45-degree angle, except I'm making a very, very tiny shell. The technique is the same. It's just the size of the tube that makes the difference. And that little tiny border you'll sometimes see at the bottom of a cake where the fondant meets the cake below it or meets the plate, where they don't want a big decoration and they just want something very, very small to cover where the fondant meets. You'll also see this on royal icing decorations too. So that is a snail trail. All right, one of the other things that you can do with a round tip is make decorations like a heart. And I'm going to use like a 6, a 7, or an 8. You can use any one of them. And we're going to make some hearts. You're going to come in at a 45-degree angle. Now remember that a heart has a right side and a left side. So you don't want to come straight in. You want to come in either to the right or to the left. So I'm going to start by having the bag face toward my right shoulder. And I'm going to make a shell. Just going to let that build up and then relax the pressure. Now have the bag face my left shoulder, come up on the other side, and the same thing, coming down to a point, and then you get a nice little heart border. So just think of making 2 shells that are just coming to a point together. And again, you can make this with any size tip. You can use a larger tip, you can use a small tip. And that's a heart border. Now you can put those right next to each other and create a border, or you can just use them all over the cake, or just pipe one on the top of the cake next to a message that you've written. It's just a simple little decoration that you can do. Now, of course, with round tips, you can also do figure piping. You can pipe animals. That's a completely different subject than what we're covering today, but the round tips would be used for figure piping. Okay, a lattice border. We did a lattice border with the star tip with the number 13 or 14, and I just want to quickly show you how to do that with a round tip. You want to touch the icing to your cake. Just lift it slightly off the board and create a straight line. And all you're going to do is, as long as you keep that lifted, you can guide the string so that they remain very, very straight. If you try to drag it on the cake, what happens is you end up with a line like that. You can't keep a nice, perfect straight line when the tip is touching the cake. You have to just touch it to the cake and then lift it and let the string fall. I'm using a number 4 for this demonstration. You can go right down to a number 1 or smaller. And then just change directions to get the lattice effect. And I'm not going to use that. There we go. And again, if you make a mistake like I did there, keep a needle tool or a toothpick, some small little tool that you can just pick that up off of your cake, and you can correct your mistake. There. So that's the basic lattice border. Now, just a quick note on the tips. Both Wilton and Natiko have the basic round tips starting with 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, up to 12, which are the basic round tips. There's another company called PME that also makes beautiful, beautiful tips. They have a 1.5, and then they have a 0, and a 00, and a 000. And those require a very special royal icing that has been sieved many, many times so that it is very, very smooth and there are no bubbles in it or any lumps at all. And that's what they pipe the oriental string work with. So we're not using the 00 or the 0 or the 1 or the 1.5 by PME today, but they are available for really fine decorating. Okay, so we're going to move on to some scrolls. And the scrolls, I'm going to use a number 2 tip. All right, and the basic Colonial Scroll, you start at the bottom and you're just going to make a C. And again, you start at the bottom and you repeat that. I'm just making a marker right now, just creating a pattern. Then start in the middle and go in a little circular motion. This is the same border that I taught you with the shell, or excuse me, with the star tip. And we'll do one more. Just keep going in a real tight little circle and connect them. And then using the same round tip, you're going to make two little C's. And that is the Colonial Scroll border. And then the reverse of that, you start like the regular border. And this time I'm going to come from the top, start at the bottom, and then start at the top. And the same thing. There you go. And that's going to give you the reverse border. Okay, we're going to move on from here to a line scroll. And I'm going to use the number 2 tip again. Now this is a great decoration for around the inside edge at the top of a cake or on a sheet cake to do the outer perimeter of the top. I'm going to start with just sort of a loop. I'm going to do the border first, and then I'll go back and break it down for you. So I'm going to start with sort of a C shape with a loop. Try to keep them as even as you can. Notice I'm keeping the tip off of the top of the cake, or in this case the board. I'm not dragging it, otherwise I would have a really crooked line. And then I'm going to overpipe this with another one. I'm going to start right here. I'm going to do one loop, 2 loops, and a loop at the bottom. 1 loop, 2 loops, 1 at the bottom. And I'm keeping the icing right off the top, and I'm just letting it curl over itself to make those little loops. Okay, so now let me try to break this down a little bit for you. One of the things that you want to look for is an even amount of spacing from here to here and here to here all the way through, and try to keep your spacing between each loop as close as you can. This is a very hard border to have it perfectly even, but with a little bit of practice you'll be surprised how good you can get. Just remember to keep the icing off the top of the cake. Make sure you don't drag the tip. So one more time, we're going to start with sort of a little swag and a loop. A swag and a loop. A swag and a loop. And just keep repeating that. All right, that's your first part. Then we start on the inside and we create one loop, two loops, and then go down and a loop at the bottom. Down and a loop at the bottom. Okay, just to show you, let me grab this. Some variations. The top one was done with a number 3 tip. The bottom one was done with a number 1 tip. So you can see how it can change the look on the cake, and how the bottom one is a much finer decoration. So it just gives you a different look on the cake. Here I tried some where I made the top loop, that first part of the loop, taller, and I made the bottom one smaller. The second one I made just the bottom one larger and the top one shorter. And on the bottom one I made both the top and the bottom loops both extended. So with the same border, just changing the way you make the loops, you can change the look of the border. So this is a really interesting border to learn. Okay, I'm going to get ready. I'm going to get a few pieces together. We're going to come back and I'm going to teach you the basics of basic string work. We'll be right back. Okay, we're back and ready to do some string work. I want to show you a couple things before we get into actually piping. Number one is how to make a cone out of parchment paper. Now, when I'm doing string work, I don't use a disposable bag, or you could use a disposable bag, but a refillable bag is a better word. I only fill the bag once. I use the icing in it, and then I clean out my tip and I start a new bag. Every time you put icing in the bag, you're adding water, some of the icing dries out and you get little hard particles and it starts plugging your tip. And that is a disaster for string work. You want really smooth, creamy icing that is fresh. So always start with a new bag. So I want to show you how to use one of the Wilton parchment triangles to make a bag. Start with the long side toward you and the point going out. Whether you're right or left-handed, it doesn't matter. Start with one side or the other and bring it on the inside. Just curl that around on the inside. Now hold that between your fingers and bring the other side around the outside. So there you have the bag. Let me just show you one more time, because some people get confused with this. Pick one side or the other and bring it up and around on the inside. And then grab your other corner and bring that around the outside. And then bring all the edges together and you'll have a nice sharp point. And then the best thing to do at that point is just fold that over 3 or 4 times. And then you have a perfect decorating bag that's disposable. You can just rip the paper off in the end and take the tube out. It's no mess, it's great. Take a pair of scissors and cut off a little piece, not too much. And I'm going to use a number 2 tip. And I'm ready to go with the bag. Now, for string work, I prefer to use either the boiled icing that I spoke about at the beginning of the class, or I like using a royal icing. Either one, the consistency makes a big difference. So I've beat this till it's fairly stiff, and now I've got to get the air out of it. So I'm going to put it on a board, And I'm going to do what they call paddling. I'm just going to use a spatula, and I'm going to go back and forth, and I'm going to remove the air from this. And you'll see the icing getting creamier and smoother as I do this. You only have to do it for a minute or two, and you'll start seeing all the air bubbles disappear. And this makes a big difference in your string work. There, that's ready. So now I'm going to take this icing, and I'm going to put that right in the bag. So every time you fill a bag, paddle the icing, get the air out of it, and start a fresh bag. And then just like any other, just squeeze the bag until any air that's in there comes out. Now we're ready to start decorating. Okay, for the string work, I've got my paddled icing, my royal icing in the bag, and I've got a number 2 tip on. And I'm going to start by showing you a simple border that we use to mark borders when we want to do a drop decoration on a cake. So we're just going to start by attaching the icing to the cake. Just pretend this is the side of a cake and not a board. I like to keep a wet paper towel. Attach the icing, pull straight back. And then if you bring it over to the side and reattach it, you'll get a nice drop. Let me just do that again. So if I were trying to mark the side of a cake, to pipe a border on it, this is what I would do first. Okay, so what I want to show you, what I didn't do is I didn't drop my hand and come down. So I'm going to do what a lot of beginning decorators do so you can see the difference. If I attach this and I try to come down like this, you see what happens? Even if I try to keep it above the cake, and off of the cake, I can't get an even border. It is really so imperative that you pull the icing straight back. It's not going to break if you've got good icing. And then bring it over and attach it. Straight back, bring it over, and attach it. And don't be afraid if one breaks. You can fix it. And I'm sure one will break in the next 5 minutes, and I'll show you how to fix it. Straight back, and then over. Always remember, when you get to the right side, or if you're left-handed and you're going the other direction, anchor it when you start, and make sure that you anchor it back to the cake when you get to the other side so that your string doesn't fall. If you don't anchor it, you'll be halfway around the cake and you'll go back and look at your cake and you'll see string work that starts falling off your cake. That's because you didn't anchor the string work. So there's a basic string. And now we'll do the basic string but interlocking them. So we'll anchor the icing. And then we start in the middle. Start in the middle. You're doing the same thing, except you're overlapping them this time. And you can see by paddling that icing, I haven't had any air bubbles yet at all. And again, always make sure that you push that last bit right up to the cake. So that's a basic single string border. You can overlap them or you can leave them unoverlapped. Okay, now we're going to do the double string. And again, you can do it just double all the way across or you can overlap it. So we'll start with just going straight across. So start with one string and then the other one will fall just inside of it. Make sure that the 2 points meet. Just pull straight out and then over. Pull straight out and then over. Try to keep the distance between the bottom string and the top string as equidistant as you can. So I'm making sure that I attach them on the end and that I always attach it at the beginning. Okay, now to do the overlapped, just like the first one, we're going to do 2. Then we're going to start in the middle. Start at the end of your first one, cross the second one, and then anchor to the cake. And start in the middle. So the trick here is to keep the distance between the bottom and the top string as close as possible, and to keep the distance of each of the points where they all come together at the top as equidistant as you can. Oops. And we'll do the last one. And then we'll do a triple. Now with the triple, I like to keep them a little narrower, but if you have a really good icing and you want to go wider and deeper, you certainly can. So I'm going to go deep, and then I'm going to add a second string and then a third string. Make sure that they always come to a point together, and then right in the middle, 1, 2, and 3. This is a very elegant border. I'll just do a couple here, and then I'll show you a join that I can do. So I'm not going to overlap them this time. Start by touching it to the cake, letting a little loop drop, and then making a little circle on the top. And you get this nice little finish on the border. And that's a triple loop with a little string drop. I'm going to change the board here, and we'll go on and make another one. Okay, one of the last borders I want to show you is a quintet border. This one's a little bit different than the others. I'm going to start by dropping one long string. And then I'm going to come in maybe 3/8 of an inch, and I'm going to drop a second one and finish it about the same distance from the other side. And then I'm going to add a third. Now start with the end of your shortest string, and this now becomes your long string. The middle string always connects to the middle string. And now the long string becomes your short one. And then repeat the process. Your short one now becomes your long one. Your middle always stays in the middle, and your long string becomes your short. And just keep repeating that process. And that is a quintet border. Now, just to show you a couple embellishments that you can do, this is a double drop border that I've done, and I haven't overlapped it. One of the things that we did on the other one is a basic loop, drop a loop, and then another little loop. Another thing is you can make a little bow. Just think of a little heart on the right and a little heart on the left. And then just pull the string out and make two little tails. Pull the string out and just let it break off, and you get two little tails. And then we'll do one more here. There. And that's one of the embellishments that you can do. One of the other embellishments, which is sort of an old-fashioned one, but I still see it once in a while, is actually a little bell. And to make the bell, come up at an angle from underneath, start squeezing, and hold the tip right in there, and build up the icing so that the end gets larger, and then just make a little circle around it. Just make a little circle around the bottom of it, and it just resembles a little wedding bell. That's sort of an old-fashioned decoration you don't see around very much. Once in a while you'll see a bow on top of that. I hope you enjoyed seeing all these different borders you can make with round tips. I'm going to grab a 9-inch round cake that I've got iced and partially decorated, and I'll finish decorating a cake using round tubes today. I'll be right back. Okay, we're back. I've got a 9-inch round cake iced with pink buttercream, and I've decorated part of the cake, and I'm going to show you how I did this. So we'll start with the string work. This was a triple string, and I've got a fresh bag of icing with white in it this time. Now, what I've done was I divided my cake before I started. I just used this tip. I marked this side and this side, and then I turned my cake and I divided it in 4. And then I took each quarter and I divided it in half again and then in half again. So I have 4, 8, 12, 16 marks, and that allows me to get an even string work all the way around the cake. So if you want precision, it really is important to mark your cake. Otherwise you'll end up at the end and you'll either have a great big long string work or that's a very, very tiny one. So again, I'm going to touch my tube to the cake, pull back, and then over, and then I'm going to attach it. Start right where I attached the last one. And that's the triple string. Keep the end of the tip clean. I'm sort of doing this on the side, so you're not seeing me pull straight out. Usually I'm doing string work head on, so I would be pulling straight out and then over. And you notice I can stop and I can sort of place that string right where I want it. The icing is strong enough that it'll hold, it won't break. If it breaks, it's because there's an air bubble. I would not recommend trying to do string work with buttercream icing. It simply doesn't hold together well enough. Okay. Now, if you remember in the last lesson, I talked about the importance of doing your side borders before you do your bottom border. If any of these strings had broken while I was working, they would have landed on the border on the bottom. So always do your side decorations first. So now I'm going to go back and do the little embellishments. I'm going to drop a little ribbon or a little loop and then a circle. A loop and a circle. Try to get the loops all about the same length if you can. And there is the side border. Now for the bottom border, I'm going to use a number 8 tip, and I'm going to make little buttons or little dots. We'll start over here where I finished. I'm coming in at a 45-degree angle because I'm using, if I were putting it on the top of a cake, like I instructed you at the beginning of the video, I would go straight up and down. But because I'm coming in and I'm putting it at the edge of the cake, I've got to come in at a 45-degree angle. I can't come in straight up and down or my knuckles would be into the side of the cake. So squeeze, keep the tip buried, and a little circular motion when you're done. Just so that you don't get a little tip on there, you know, a little point. Try to keep them as uniform as you can. And here's a little trick. If you do get a tip on them and you want to get rid of that little point, put your finger in water, just wet it, and just touch it, and it will flatten it out for you. Usually if I were decorating a cake for a business, I would have latex gloves on, so I wouldn't be putting my finger all over the cake, but a little wet finger will just take care of that for you. Remember to keep the end of the tip buried. And there's the last one. And now we're going to use that same tip that we used for the string work. I always keep a cup or some sort of a container next to me. On the bottom of this, I either keep a wet paper towel, or in this case, I'm using a wet sponge. So when I'm done using a decorating bag, especially when I'm working with a boiled or royal icing, I just drop it in here, and the end of the bag will stay on that wet paper or that wet sponge so that it doesn't dry out. That's an important thing to remember. And now we're going to drop a string. And I'm using a smaller tip than I used at the rest of the border so you can see the difference. I'm just going to drop a string, go right back to the cake. It won't look as good unless you go all the way back. This is just a little string embellishment for the bottom border. And again, if you notice, I'm letting the string drop from the tip. I'm not right up against the decoration trying to make that circle. I'm just letting the string drop. And then right in the center, we're going to add a little bit of a pink dot. We're making these dots the same way you made the larger ones. Keep the tip buried. The smaller the dot, the less of a circle you have to go in to finish it, for a nice smooth finish. The nice part about working with buttercream is you can be so creative in adding little embellishments like these little dots that are very simple to do but can add a nice decoration to the cake. For the top of the cake, since we're using all round tips so far, I'm going to use the number 8 tip, and I'm going to make a very simple shell border. And I'm going to keep it sort of a tight shell. Again, I'm just letting that icing build up, roll over itself, release the pressure, and pull back. This is a rather plain looking border. I like it because of that. There. For the top of the cake, I'm going to stand up so that I can do a floral design on the top of the cake. Now, in a previous video, I taught how to make buttercream flowers, buttercream roses. So I'm not going to teach roses today. I'm going to make a few, but to get a really good lesson on buttercream roses, I have an entire video dedicated just to making buttercream roses. So to begin with, I'm going to start with a simple round tip. And I'm going to use a number 2. And I'm thinking, how do I want this spray of flowers to look on my cake? I'm going to start with the stems at the bottom. And the best way is to think in odd numbers. So we're going to start with 3. So I'm going to start with my longest. I'm going to let that build up. Don't worry if it breaks in between like that. This can all be fixed. I'm going to make a second one. I'm just letting it build up and coming right to the middle. Now I can just go over that little spot that broke. So now I have some basic stems that I can work with. Now I want some stems going this way for the floral spray. So I think the furthest I want to go around is going to be probably over here. And I'm just going to let the string drop. I'm going to follow the edge of the cake, and I'm going to come right into where I have my 3 stems. So I did 3 here. I think I'm going to do probably 3 or 5 here. So I'm going to come back about an inch or 2, and I'm going to come into where my stems were, and then come back another inch or 2 from that one, and come right into where those were. And now I can do 1 there and 1 there. Now I have the basic outline of a floral spray. I have my stems, and then I have like my little branches. From here, if you want to add some little side branches, you can do that. But your basic structure is now done. Don't put too many. It can sort of be over decorated. Now I'm going to switch to a 104 tip with some pink icing in it. Okay. One of the tools that I always use in cake decorating is an Atico cake tester. This is normally used to test your cake to see if it's done. I keep it for 2 reasons. Number 1, when I'm doing string work and one of these strings breaks, I can just pick it up with this and pull it right off the cake. A needle tool works as well, but don't use a pin. Don't use something dangerous that can be left in the cake. This is great because the end on it is easy to find and it doesn't get lost, and it won't get lost in a cake. I also use those on the top of the cake sometimes when I want to scribe something. If I want to outline something, I can just gently scribe it in the top of the cake or the side of the cake with this tool. So that works really well. The other reason is they're great for unplugging tips. You can put it right inside the tip and just move it around. And if you've got a little lump of sugar or icing in there that's hardened, you can pop it right out of there. So I'm going to start by making some basic rosettes or little rosebuds, and this I'll cover in a future video as well. I'm just sort of scattering these all around the cake. And then right where I'm going to put my roses, I'm going to make a little mound of icing. And then we'll do the buttercream roses. Again, I have an entire video showing how to make these. And to transfer it, I'm using my scissors. I'm just putting them under the rose, placing it, and then squeezing the scissors together. And I'm going to put 3 roses on here. And we'll put a second one. And one more. The consistency is one of the most important things in making roses, the consistency of the icing. If it's not stiff enough, it won't stand tall enough, and the rose will look flat and lifeless. And there's our final rose. And then I have a bag with some green icing in it, and I put a leaf tip in here. This is a number 67. And I'm just going to pull out some green leaves out of here. And then right on the backs of the buds, I'm going to put a little leaf. Okay, and now I can go back with my round tip and I can make some little tendrils. And in order to do that, I'm just going to start behind the bud and just make little squiggles, little curls. It's sort of these small embellishments that can really set off a nice buttercream cake. It's the sort of thing that the average bakery won't do, but you would do at home. And that's basically it. The last thing I should do is maybe write something on here, and I'll do this in white. Again, writing I'll do in a future video. So this again is a number 2 tip, and let's see. Little embellishing on there. And keep the tip clean. There, a simple happy birthday. And that is a buttercream cake done with the drop string work. Just a little dot border on the bottom with a little string and another dot on top of it, and using a round tip to create a shell border with the round, and then the floral spray and some simple writing. You can make a very beautiful basic cake with basic techniques. You don't have to have a lot of lavish, really difficult borders to make a really nice all-occasion cake. I hope you've enjoyed this series. We have more videos to come. The next one will be on using the petal tip and making flowers. We also have one coming up on specialty tips. And then the final one will be on advanced borders and putting all the tips together and making other types of decorations that use a combination of tips together. So again, you can find all the products at globalsugarart.com. I hope you've enjoyed this as much as I've enjoyed doing this. Thanks for watching.